So usually, with a rattle, you know, I'm trying to pick a good spot. Typically it's a bench, a place, and it's nowhere random. It's maybe a place where I found sheds close to the area before. If an area where I've seen a lot of whitetail activity. Again, it's not a place random. It's a place I know there's whitetails that actively move through there. Maybe it's a spot where I pass through and I see active scrapes on the ground that bucks make. And so I try to find a spot where my silhouette's not visible. I have a backing. It could be brush, it could be a tree. I also pay attention to my wind. Obviously, if my wind's blowing in the wrong direction, what's the purpose even being there? They're just gonna smell me.
Mm-hmm.
And so usually I always go based on, like, most thermals, if you're rattling uphill, if you do at first light before the sun rises, you're gonna have some good thermals blowing down the hill. And so that's what I usually go based on. But the rattling sequence, I usually rattle. I go about 2 minutes at a time. Really not that long, but it's what I like with the rattle, it's loud. Grunts are not that loud, so if anything's far off and can't hear me, they don't know I'm here. And so I like the rattle simply just because it's loud enough. And I'll sit there and I'll pretend I'm sitting down. I don't want to sit down here. But rattle, very simple. I cut the eye guards off because when I was a kid, I was anti-cut anything off, and I would bruise my fingers over those eye guards. And so I finally just said, okay, I gotta cut these ones off. And sometimes I'll even hit this loud too. And then at the end of usually at the end of a fight, there's a little bit of, they're not full, it doesn't fully stop like this. So usually when I'm done rattling, my dad always taught me just to tink the tips. And then stop and wait for about 10 minutes. And sometimes throughout this sequence too, if you have like a 5-minute period of time, you can hit the ground. Again, this is all stuff that my dad taught me, but you know, my dad has killed a lot of big whitetails over the years in Montana and Idaho, and you know, I've just done the same thing. And again, it's back to being a patience game, because I'm probably the only sibling in my family that's actually killed bucks rattling. Nobody else in my family's patient enough to sit there and do this. But sometimes if you think maybe there's a buck close, sometimes just a little simple, you're just like making a scrape, you know, just making some extra sounds that are natural to the environment, that would imitate a buck. Sometimes if I could see a buck is coming in from afar, I've actually tickled the antler, so it's like, okay, I see a buck, but I can't get a good visual on him yet, but he's not alarmed. I still just a little tickle of the antlers can keep him coming.
Yeah.
And he'll keep, it's like, oh, okay, the rut's still going, and he'll come past. What's funny to me is sometimes they don't always come directly at me to pinpoint me, but they'll actually walk past me. It's just, what it does is it almost creates a rut frenzy. And no joke, the most deer I've ever rattled in one day was 9.
Really? That's doing good.
Yeah, but I've never done that again.
Yeah, that was the right day.
If I get 2 a day, that's good.
Yeah, yeah.
But I rat one time, and it was back to perfect conditions. It was a spot. It's so funny. It was like it's a spot where my dad rattled for years, and it was like the same tree. But what I've found over time, that it wasn't random, it was a corridor. And so where 2 ridges connect, there's a spot where you have 2 drainages, they connect, just like this. And so you have whitetails on both sides, and they funnel. And then when they come down, and on that particular day, there was a deep snow in the high mountains. So when I was rattling, I was having bucks coming past me left to right. I was just having so much action.
Sounds like, wow.
And they all came from above. And I moved my spot twice. So like in one spot, I rattled like 5 bucks. I moved to a different spot and rattled in 4 bucks.
Wow.
It was insane.
Yeah, I'd say.
And it sounds weird and it doesn't sound real, but it was a cool experience. But usually, like I said, usually 2 to 3 times. Another time where it's worked for me is I've gone hiking, and when I got fresh snow and I see a rut and buck track and I'm following it and it goes into a thick timber patch. I did this before, and this was in Montana. I was in Montana, I had a Montana tag. There's a nice bench, and right where I was on that fresh track, I just I just did a quick rattle really quick, and it was seconds. Buck bounces over,
Comes out.
comes right out and looks at me.
Mm.
Really wide, about an 18 to 20 inch 4x4. I was being selective that year and I let him go. But it's like, you know, I was just using common sense.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, well, there's a fresh buck track going in that timber
Yeah.
and he's on a nice bench there. He's got to be right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I rattle, you know, with muleys, I do turn my head a little bit more. With elk, I turn my head a lot more. Whitetails, one thing, and I'm going based on what my dad taught me, you don't want to be moving a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you hear something, slowly move your head. You know, try to, and it's nice if you have two people, you have somebody looking behind you too.
Mm-hmm.
But whitetails, so I've called them muleys. They make noise when you can hear their sound of their hooves. Whitetails, when they come in, I mean, you hear whitetails, they're quiet.
Quiet.
Sometimes you don't even hear them.
Yeah. You're like, how did he get here?
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden it's like, how did that deer?
Yeah.
Sometimes they hear their grunt more than their,
Yeah.
and you hear their little bleats come in.